I'm going to start out with European red mite, which is a pest that most people don't consider usually to be too much of a problem in stone fruits, but in fact they can develop into a considerable problem certain years, especially if you have hot and dry summers, which we do tend to get, and particularly in peaches. Um, if you've got an orchard that's had a history of problems with red mites, you can sort of anticipate what you might find this year with regard to those mites. Even now, if you went out there and looked for the overwintering eggs, you'll be able to see them on the bark, the spurs, and in the bud scales. And these are bright red eggs. They look somewhat like paprika. And if you can see them, that's basically an indication that you've got a pretty good population, and you might want to keep them in mind and maybe even take some preventive measures before we start the season, and I'll get into that in a second. Also, obviously, during the summer, it's a good idea, as it always is, to inspect your foliage to be sure you're not getting some infestations building up. We don't have thresholds that are quite as precise in stone fruits as we do for apples. Basically, the presence of eggs or motile forms on the foliage is a good indication that you need to take some treatment action. I will say that peaches are a little more tolerant of mite populations than apples are. So if you have somewhere upwards of 20 motile forms running around on your leaves, 20 per leaf, let's say, that's a treatable population. And after that, you'll soon start to see some bronzing and damage to the leaf itself. So control tactics available to you. A dormant oil application at bud burst is a very good idea because it will smother the eggs that are out there now, and it's impossible for mites to get resistant to this type of treatment. You can use oil, or you can use an ovicide such as Apollo or Savvy, even up as late as June, because even at that point in early June, you're still dealing primarily with the egg forms of the mites. Later on in the season, if you do get into a situation where you need a rescue treatment, we do have a number of products available that are suitable for that. Acromite or Banter, they're the same active ingredient, which is etoxazole. We have Zeal, Magister, and Portal. And in peaches and plums only, there's Nectar. It's not labeled for in-season use on the other stone fruits like cherries or apricots. So at any rate, that's one thing to keep in mind. Cherries occasionally get European red mite problems. And you could also, it doesn't hurt you to look at the buds and foliage on those trees as well, but peaches tend to get them worse.